Isn't that the problem? Is that the military doesn't seem to be the problem. We can send them in, they can do their job. The fact of the matter is that the Karzai government in Afghanistan does not seem to be living up to its half of the bargain. And I was struck this morning by an article which talked about Hamid Karzai discussing with the Taliban and with Pakistan about power sharing in Afghanistan against the very people who in Afghanistan were U.S. allies to begin with. This is so convoluted at this point, it doesn't seem that there's a way out.
Well, the most challenging aspect of this whole strategy is the civilian diplomatic aspects. As you point out, the military aspects are pretty clear-cut. We're going in and we're already making success in terms of disrupting the Taliban very effectively. There'll be more actions in the South. But the real key is the diplomatic and political capacity of the Afghans.
And is that something the military ought to be doing? I mean,
it's something that we all have to do. There is a role, but there's a significant role for our American advisors, for Ambassador Eichenberry, for others there. There's also a role for AID. There's a role to build capacity in the Afghani government. Not just military capacity, but governmental capacity, delivering services.
But they're not doing that. Let me turn to Senator Chambliss. I mean, certainly in Marja, which I want to talk about later, the Afghan government's ability to get services to people has been fairly weak, if not non-existent. And what do you think about our diplomatic effort? One of the things that Republicans are beginning to say now is it's also time for a change in the civilian leadership here. They talk about Ambassador Eichenberry. They talk about Ambassador Holbrooke, saying that the civilian half of this equation has not done well. It's time to clear house.
Well, I think that ought to be looked at right now as General Petraeus comes in with his team of military leaders. They've got to work hand in hand with the civilian side. So I think it's an opportunity for the president to take a look at it. Ambassador Holbrooke has a very strong record that can be looked back on, but the fact is, I don't think he even talks to Karzai. Now, should somebody who is in a strong leadership position have an ongoing dialogue with the president of the country? I would say yes, and apparently that is not the case right now.
Senator Reid, what do you...
I do think there's the opportunity for the president to look at both the military side and the civilian side, because they have to work hand in hand if we're ever going to come to some stable government in Afghanistan.
And Ambassador Eichenberry is on record as not thinking Karzai is up to it, so it's a little hard for them to have a relationship. Is it time for him to go? Is it time for anyone to go? Or do you have faith in this team?
Well, first of all, General Petraeus will get on the ground, and he's been very effective in pulling together in Iraq not only the American effort, but also the effort of the host country. And I think he'll be equally successful in Afghanistan. I think everyone recognizes, both the civilian side and the military side, that there has to be a unified effort. There has to be a concentration on assisting the Afghanis, but ultimately this is going to be the Afghanis' effort. People ask the question, well, how do we know when we win? Well, we'll know the same way we know in Iraq, that the burden of the battle is being borne by the local forces, not by American and NATO forces, that we'll be able to withdraw our forces, not immediately, but we'll be able to withdraw them. We'll be able to focus on regional counterterrorism, not country-specific counterinsurgency. That's when we know we'll win, just like we are knowing we're winning in Iraq.
To the specific question, is U.S. Ambassador Eichenberry in Afghanistan, in Kabul, is he the best person for this job, given a non-existent relationship with the president of the country that we need to step forward?
Well, I've been with Ambassador Eichenberry in the presence of President Karzai, and they have a relationship. They have communicate. Sometimes the ambassador has to tell things to President Karzai that he doesn't want to listen to, that he doesn't want to do. A lot of this criticism that Karzai doesn't do this, that Karzai won't take action, there has to be someone there that tells him, that suggests to him, he's a sovereign, but suggests to him that his best course of action for his country is certain steps. So we have to have, I think, someone there who's willing to be firm, not offensive, but firm to the government of Afghanistan.
So you think he's the right man in place?
I think they've got a team now in place that can get the job done. I think they all retain the confidence of the president, and now they have to work together.
Okay. When we return, inching towards success in Marja. McChrystal famously called a bleeding ulcer the Taliban stronghold of Marja in Helmand province. Marjah was supposed to be the showpiece of the clear, hold, and build strategy. The idea was to use the military to clear out the Taliban and then win the hearts of the community with better government services and a workable local power structure. 4 months into the Marjah operation, Time magazine offers the assessment of a company commander on the Taliban presence in Marjah. It depends on what your metric is for clear. They're obviously not gone, and they're not going to be gone. According to a report in the Washington Post, there have been more U.S. military deaths in Marjah this month than in the first month of the operation. Taliban intimidation of civilians is rampant. But Defense Secretary Robert Gates recently testified that the gloom and doom reports are premature, that the Marjah effort just needs more time.
The reality is that the military operations in Marjah were successful. And a place that had been controlled by the Taliban is no longer, for 2 years or more, is no longer controlled by the Taliban. Getting the civilian coalition and Afghan forces in there, the civilian officials, building the development programs is moving forward, but it is moving slower than we originally anticipated.
We'll address that with Senators Reid and Chambliss when we return. We are back with Senator Saxby Chambliss of Georgia and Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. Senator Chambliss, to you, Leon Panetta at the CIA is now assessing the strength of the Taliban in Afghanistan and has said that in some ways the Taliban is weaker and in some ways it's stronger. This doesn't seem to me to be a recipe for success.
Well, you have to remember, though, that with the different regions of Afghanistan, some areas are stronger from a tribal standpoint than others, and where we have those strong tribal regions, then the Taliban has the ability to come in the middle of the night and intimidate and threaten people, and in a lot of instances kill people to demand their loyalty. In those areas, the people have been hesitant to get on board with the American effort, the NATO effort, but there are other regions where we have gained ground. Marjah is one where militarily, I would have to agree with what Secretary Gates said. He's right on that we've done well militarily, but then when you look at the civilian side, there are issues. There are very difficult issues. So I would say that Leon's statement is probably pretty well correct, that in the areas where we have really concentrated militarily, we've done well. But you have to give up something when you do that. In certain other areas, the Taliban probably has gained in strength because they've moved their troops there.
Well, then it sounds to me, Senator Reid, a little bit like whack-a-mole. We're over here, we can push them back militarily, but they pop up someplace else. And again, there's not that kind of civilian reinforcement that has yet to move into Marjah and be successful at any rate. And now we're talking about, well, next year at this time, we'll be preparing to remove some U.S. troops. And a lot of people don't think that's realistic.
Well, first, the Taliban was able to reconstitute itself principally in the south, in Helmand province and Kandahar. And they developed intricate networks of governance, and effectively they were the power. We are, along with the Afghani forces, trying to take back those two provinces. It's a tough fight. We understood that. It's a very difficult fight. We
didn't know it would be this tough to do the whole operation.
I think the assumption was, and very clearly, General McChrystal at that time and Admiral Mullen and Secretary Gates was saying, this is going to be a very difficult summer. We're going into the home ground, if you will, of the Taliban. They've had years to reconstitute themselves. They're supported from safe havens in Pakistan. They have been running these areas for years now, and the idea we're going to walk in and they're going to run away, I think, was never contemplated. This is a tough fight, unfortunately. And then we have to bring in the key component. You're absolutely right. It's the Afghanis' fight. They have to prevail. They have to be enforced down there. Afghani recruitment and retention for their army and police are beginning to show real progress, but it takes a while to take those troops, train them, get them in the fight, and have them effective. Well,
and there's complaints that the Afghan troops are, not as willing to put their lives on the line as the U.S. troops are, that they have, there's a high incidence of drug use. I mean, we may be getting more of them, but they haven't been an effective fighting force.
They have not yet been an effective fighting force. Again, we have tried several times over the last almost 8 years to train an Afghani national army. It's been fits and starts. It's failed. It's been resurrected. Now we're once again focusing with some of our very best people. General Caldwell, who's leading the effort for NATO and for the United States, is trying to develop an Afghani fighting force that is going to be capable. We saw some of the same problems in Iraq, where we had fits and starts there, but they started with a much higher level. They had a professional military force that was reasonably well trained. We're not starting with that kind of benchmark in Afghanistan.
Senator Chambliss, one of the other things that Director Panetta said was that right now he figures there are 50 to 100 al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. The whole reason we went into Afghanistan was that that's where al-Qaeda was. They were being obviously protected by the Taliban, but the al-Qaeda was there. We wanted to break the back of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan because of what happened on 9/11. Now they're down to 50 to 100 people, and we're in there with 94,000 troops. You see how people might look at that and go, why are we still there? What do we owe Afghanistan at this point?
Well, what Jack just described is exactly the case from the standpoint of having a safe haven in Pakistan. Leon Panetta is exactly right. The number of al-Qaeda is fairly minimal right now, but they go back and forth across the border. And they are providing tactical information to the Taliban. They are working hand in hand with them. And we see a lot of al-Qaeda presence, but we don't necessarily see individuals, and by that I mean from a training standpoint, from an operations standpoint, from a weapons standpoint. You're seeing a lot of influence, but you don't necessarily see a lot of al-Qaeda individuals there. However, if we left today, Candy, Afghanistan would be the same training ground for al-Qaeda that we saw in 2000 and leading up to 2001. So that's why it's important that we continue the fight and that we continue until we prevail with respect to the elimination of Afghanistan as a training ground for those who want to kill and harm Americans.
Let me, in the final minutes we have, and I think these are three very sort of short yes or no questions to both of you, and first to Senator Reid. Do you have faith that Hamid Karzai is up to getting his country together enough for us to be able to begin to leave?
He's the elected president, Democratic elected president. He has to succeed. We have to help him. That burden is at this point, I think, unknown, but we can't change horses. We've got to make sure that he does the job he's been elected to do.
So we hope so. Number two, do you think U.S. troops will begin to withdraw by next year this time?
I do. The withdrawal will be subject to the commanders on the ground. It will not represent a significant, I think, complete pull out of American forces, but it'll be, as we're doing in Iraq, beginning to lower our presence and letting them take the fight.
And finally, is it important anymore that we track down Osama bin Laden, who, according to Director Panetta, we haven't seen since the early 2000s?
I think it's important to keep the pressure on al-Qaeda wherever they are.
Okay. Senator Chambliss, the same to you. Do you believe Hamid Karzai is up to the job we need him to do?
I think he's very weak, but he's the best we've got, and he's been elected by the Afghan people, and we have an obligation to recognize that, respect that, and support him.
So another maybe. And number two, do you think U.S. forces will begin to withdraw this time next year?
I think it's a huge mistake to even put that deadline out there, because the enemy is watching, and you can rest assured that they're going to be looking to see if we, in fact, intend to begin pulling out come July 1 of 2011. And if that remains a hard and firm date, then you better believe they're going to sit back and allow us to start pulling out and then hit us with their full force.
And finally, how important is it to find Osama bin Laden?
Certainly from a symbolic standpoint, it's important that we find him and take him out, but gosh, we've about eliminated his ability to provide any kind of assistance to al-Qaeda. We've taken out, once again, his number 3 in rank of al-Qaeda, and he was the operations guy. Whoever comes in next, certainly you might want to buy a life insurance policy on him, but getting Bin Laden, getting Zawahiri are important, but what we really need to make sure we do is continue to take out those folks who are providing the operation leadership on the ground, and we're doing that.
Senator Saxby Chambliss, thank you so much. Senator Jack Reed, thank you as well. I appreciate it. When we come back, the first verse of our political State of the Union.